leave you. All right, once you do that, set them down, let them fill up a little bit. You've got your queen here. You've got a cork in the can end. While in shipment, you have to have this cork in or the bees would eat her out. You don't want to do that. You take your knife or something sharp, remove your cork. Then the bees can eat through here and then let your queen out. We're going to lay her right on this package right here. You can see her in there with her attendants. We'll lay that. You need to do this late in the evening. This keeps drifting so bad. If you've got 10 or 15 packages, and you don't want to set them too close together, if you have plenty of room, put them at least 5 feet apart. And dark gives them time to get used to the hive during the night. If you get them in the morning, just keep them till night. Just feed them. And so here we go. We're going to put it right up on here. We have an extra hive body, works real well. We put this like this. Take your lid off. See how they filled up now, the channel. We'll put this right over it. You got a frame of brood. Your lid will go on top. Steve, put your lid on top of it there now.
Okay, let me tilt it up right here and see if we can get a shot down into the hive. I just don't believe we can get a shot down into the hive, but all those folks know those bees are pouring out there, covering up that queen cage right there. We're going to take our inner cover right now, and we're going to cover that thing up. We're going to put our top right down on top of here, and another real important thing is we're going to take us an entrance reducer right here. We're going to set that entrance reducer into that hive to where they just have a very, very small hole to come and go out of. Whenever you're feeding bees like that, you want to get it to where they have a very small hole and they don't have much to guard right there.
That keeps the robbing down, because, and another thing, by being late at night, the bees don't have time to start robbing. They can, next morning they've sucked up all your syrup you have and cleaned up all your broken honey, and there's no odor there for them to start robbing. And then you should leave that there for 7 days. I don't go back into that hive for 7 days. I go back in 7 days. Remove this hive body, remove your package, your queen is out, and then you know you give her time to go to laying. If there's eggs there, she's in there, you'll have eggs. You want to be hunting a virgin and they won't come near balling her. If you go in there in 2 and 3 days, the queen has just got out. They're subject to ball her by you jarring the hive and killing your queen. So that's why you want to wait at least 7 days.
We want to have food on them too, don't we, Harold? Don't we want to feed them? That's a real important thing, is to keep food on them too. They've got to have sugar syrup. What ratio of sugar syrup? Would we mix it 1 part sugar and 1 part water?
Yes, sir. About half and half, about 1-to-1 ratio.
Now, this is Harold's favorite way of installing a package right here, but there's other ways too. George, let me ask you, let me get back here with you. Is this the way that you install a package, or do you do it any differently?
Well, I do it a little different.
How do you do it?
I get my hive ready, set the package right over, have the cap off of it. I get a frame of brood and put in this box, and I do it in just as dark. And I'll get the queen and the brood in there, and I shake them all out of that box right down in front of the hive and let them go in.
So you shake the bees in front of the hive?
And let them go right in there. Then when you get them smoked in lightly, just put your end stick in, forget about them until the next morning.
Well, now, a real problem with package bees, a lot of people, hobby beekeepers, will get 2 or 3 hives and they'll set them right together, right side by side, and they'll install 2 packages, and then they'll come back the next day and one hive will just have a queen cage in it and the other hive will have all the bees. Renee, how in the world can you get away from that? How can you cut your drifting down?
Again, wait till night so they won't drift. Is the main thing, is to install each hive at night, each package at night.
Well, that's mighty good advice here. Folks, we're with the Curtises down in LaBelle, Florida. They've shown you 2 methods of how to install packages of bees. I hate to say anything about it. They raise a mighty gentle queen, so we're out here without any kind of veil or any protective gear on. Again, hobbyists, I recommend that you have veils, that you have suits, that you have, that you have gloves. You start off slowly. These are master beekeepers right here. They've been doing it for a long time. Curtises, we sure do appreciate these lessons. Thanks an awful lot.
Thank you. Sure will.
There's a few ways to get bees when you first start off, and we've already showed you one of them, and that's getting a package of bees and establishing it. Another way that you might be able to get bees is to take your colony of bees to a beekeeper and have them install a swarm into it, which is a real good way to do it. Another way, and I think probably the best way, is to get a nuke, which stands for nucleus colony. And we're here today with Carter Linkus and Chris Slate. and they operate Lincoln's Bee Farm in Raleigh, North Carolina. Carter and Chris sell nukes. Carter, when you sell a nuke, how much do you get for a nuke?
We get $35 for a 5-frame nuke.
Okay, so a nuke is 5 frames of bees. Is that brood, or is that honey, or pollen, or what is it?
That is your queen, your brood, your pollen, your nectar. Basically, it is the nucleus of a good hive of bees.
Okay, so I want to get a nuke from you. I just call you up and then you mail me one?
No, nukes are to be picked up. This way, we know the minute the nuke goes into your box that it is in excellent condition.
Okay, so I come here with my hive that I've just nailed together with the foundation, and I get a, did you say 5 or 6 frames?
Some of them have 6. Generally, they're 5-frame nukes.
5-frame nukes. And do you take my frames in exchange for that?
Yes, we take your hive body, take the 6 frames out of the center with the foundation, go to one of the nuke boxes you can see in the background, take the nuke out of that, put it into your hive body. All we need to do then is basically take your inner cover, and if it has a hole, we'll put wire across the top so the bees can't get out. We'll close up your entrance with some type of wire mesh. You load it back in your car, on your truck. When you get home, all you have to do is pull the wire off, and it's over. You have a queen that's laying. That's all of the bees are siblings and of her eggs, so you have no fighting, no inner problems. They only simply have room to grow.
They have no drifting. That's a problem with package bees. And also they have 5 or 6 frames of drawn comb, which takes an awful long time to draw out too. And there's another thing that you get when you get a nuke. You also get a lesson in beekeeping, because Carter's going to take you into those bees with him and he's going to trade them right out. Now, Carter is down in eastern North Carolina, and this tape's going to be seen all over the nation, so what you need to do is to try to find somebody that sells nukes. And if you don't find somebody that sells nukes, you can go to an existing beekeeper and order a queen and go to him and have him just pull out 5 or 6 frames of brood from his hive and take that new queen and introduce that new queen with it. So here we've got another way to get you started, and it's called nukes, buying a nuke. Carter, Chris, thanks an awful lot for this.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming by.
At a variety of times during the year, you have to feed your bees. When you first get your package established, you have to feed them, and that's real important. Or when you get a swarm or anything like that, you have to feed them. Early in the spring, if you want to increase and raise bees, you have to feed them then to manipulate them. If you want to raise queens, you have to manipulate them and feed them too. Later in the year, if your bees don't have enough honey to make it through the winter, you have to feed sugar syrup to give them stores, and you also have to feed them sugar syrup to medicate them for nosema with the drug Fumidil B. There's a variety of feeders that are available on the market, and I'd like to go through 4 of them with you right now. The first one that I'd like to show you is called a division board feeder. A division board feeder is used mostly by commercial beekeepers. They put it down into the inside of a beehive. It takes the place of frames. You put the sugar syrup down into the feeder right here, and the bees go down into the feeder. A lot of problems with hobbyists come because the bees will get in here and drown. The feeders that we sell have serrated edges in there to try to keep the bees from drowning, and it works well, but all you have to do to keep the bees from drowning is when you put your sugar syrup in the feeder, fill it up with pine needles or fill it up with sticks of wood. Around here, some people even use corn cobs. Now, my favorite feeder to use is a hive top feeder, and I've got a hive top feeder right here. Let me open this beehive right here up and show you a hive top feeder. This is a hive top feeder right here. Over on this side, there's a float, and it's floating in the sugar syrup. The bees come up from inside of the hive right here, and they go down here, and these slats right here keep the bees from drowning. Now, if you'll look over here, I've got another side that the float's not being used at all. This is a wonderful feeder because you can feed sugar syrup on one side, or you can even feed water on the other side of it. During the winter, bees can actually come up into this feeder and use it. It works real well. Large amounts of feed can be taken from this feeder relatively quickly. You can put more feed on a beehive with this style of feeder than any other. And this feeder utilizes the method of feeding bees which is by far the best. the best method of feeding bees is feeding them on the inside of the colony, because Italian bees have a propensity to rob. And if you feed on the inside of the colony, they can't rob. Also, they can take the feed during the year or during the winter when it's colder, because they maintain the inside temperature of the hive. Now let me step over to the hive behind us and show you another feeder that I really like. It's called a pail feeder. Now it's another style of an inside feeder. Here with this colony, I have 2 deep hive bodies, and then I have an inner cover with an empty hive body on top of it. I'm going to take the top off of this colony, and then this empty hive body, I'm going to set it off, and you can see the pail feeder right here. The inner cover has a hole in it, and I'm going to just pry this feeder right up, and you can see the bees right up under there that are taking it. We're going to go inside in just a second, and I'm going to show you an observation hive that has a better example of this right here, and you can see a little bit better why it works. All right, now we're going to go around and take another look at a different kind of feeder, the feeder that most beekeepers use, called the entrance feeder. This feeder right here is called an entrance feeder, and most beekeepers use this feeder right here, but to be honest with you, it's not my favorite because it creates some problems. Now, the reason that I told you that an inside feeder was better, because the bees are clustered in here and they can get to it. But this feeder right here, the bees, it's isolated from the bees, so that's a problem. So in the middle of the winter and when it's really cold, they have a hard time getting to it. That's one problem. Another problem is that the bees, the Italian bees, like to rob, and this kind of perpetuates it, because you're putting sugar syrup out here, and try as much as you can, there might be a little bit of syrup that drips down the front or leaks out of the feeder, or for some reason, you know, Murphy's Law, if anything can go wrong, it will. It could bring bees from other colonies, but there's ways that you can circumvent that, and let me show you. Now, this entrance feeder plugs into the entrance guard, so I'm going to slide the feeder right out. There's a bee. She's been feeding with it. And then let me get this entrance guard and pull it right out of the colony. The entrance guard here is made for this feeder, so the feeder slides into the entrance guard. And then you take it and you set it so that this hole right here is just barely open, so that the bees on the inside can come and go out of a very small hole. Now I'm going to plug this entrance feeder, I'm going to stick it back into this hole right here. And then I'm going to stick this feeder, this entrance guard, right in here, and I'm going to shove it in just a little bit so that it has the diameter of a bee's body, which is about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, so that the bees can come and go out of that hole. Now let me show you what the benefits of that are. The benefits are, if there is any robbing and the bees come down here, we've isolated our hole over on this side over here, so it's not right at the feeder. If you put one of these on a beehive and just leave the entrance open, it can cause robbing. All right, now let's leave here and go on inside of our store, and I want to show you a hive top feeder on the inside of our store and how it works. We're inside of our store right now, where we have a 10-frame observation hive. This is a really nice way to study the bees, and you can really look and try to understand them a whole lot better. And I'd like to talk to you just a little bit about what happens over the winter when bees are clustering and everything. It's the end of November now, and it's kind of chilly outside. And this observation hive, right over here on this side, you can see that the bees are pretty well on that end frame right there. And then in the super frame up above it, there's not any bees up in there. A colony of bees is kind of round or egg-shaped. It's kind of like a basketball, and it varies from time to time in shape to shape as to how they are. But in this colony right here, they have a shape that's right in this area right here. They're just right in this area right around in here. So I took and put one of these pail feeders up on the top of it, and I'd like to show you how the bees are up under the pail feeder right here and what they do. Now understand that the cluster of bees is right here, and this is just like they were on the outside. It's cold in here. We're not heating this room right now. The bees are clustered in there. They're staying still. You can see it. Now I'm going to take this pail feeder, I'm going to tilt it forward and let you take a look at it and see what the bees are doing up under here. See how they're right up under there, and see how they're all hanging together? There's bees right up on the top of that feeder sucking the syrup out of the middle of the feeder out through the stainless steel screen wire, and then they're passing it down to all the other bees right there. So I'm going to set that back right there and let them work on it. There's an awful lot of methods for feeding bees. Feeding bees on the inside of the colony is an awful lot better. This system right here works real well, and a lot of other systems do too. With a little bit of technology, it's an easy thing to do, it's an easy thing to understand, and it helps to get your bees through the winter. It's a necessary chore that we have to do, and with the right equipment, it's not hard. Andy Webb. Andy is a third-generation queen breeder, and we're talking to him about how he feeds his bees. Queen breeders have to do an awful lot of it, and most of the queen breeders use the division board feeder, but Andy has a different method. Andy, how is it that you feed your bees?
Well, we like to use this comb filler method because it's less hazardous to the bees, and it's just easier on us. It's more convenient.
It's really quicker for the bees too, because what you're doing is you're taking the sugar syrup and putting it right next to the bees. You're putting it in the combs, and then you take the combs and put them on the bees.
Right, and that can be done at any time of the year, so you know that's another advantage we have. You can put it right in the brood nest, even in the cold weather. So.
Even hobbyists can do something like this. They can take something, they can shake sugar syrup into their combs, and really I think it's one of the very best methods of feeding.
Right, it can be done with a coffee can or a sprinkler can like you sprinkle your flowers with, very easy.
One of the real problems with Italian bees is that they rob real badly, and feeding on the inside of the beehive or doing something like this completely does away with robbing, doesn't it?
It doesn't completely, but it does eliminate a large amount of it.
Now, as I said, Andy is a queen breeder, and he has special equipment here, but the hobbyists can do it too. Let's see if we can turn this machine on and fill this comb up and see how quickly they can do it. Well, now that certainly was quick. It didn't take much time at all. We've shown you how to take a package of bees and establish a package of bees into your colony. We need for you to go back in after 7 days and make sure that you've got a queen out there and that she's laying, but you're saying to yourself, well, what do I do after that? Then you need to go back in periodically and see how your bees are doing. Bees give you a window to nature that you can't get any other way. You can understand what's going on with the year, and you really get close to nature because the nature of beekeeping is such that you monitor honey flows. So you need to understand that. When you go into a beehive, you need to know what to look for, so I'd like to talk to you just a little bit about that, and we're going to go into this colony right here and see what we can find. We're going to walk up to it, and as I told you before, we always want to stay around behind the colony. This is the front. I'm going to walk up, and I'm going to give them just a little taste of smoke. And then I'm going to come up under here and pull the top up and give them a little bit of smoke under there. I want those bees to know that, yes, we do. We've got a fire in the woods. They better be concerned about it, and they better get into that colony and see what they can do. Sucking that honey up, I'm going to give them just a little bit more. All right, now I'm going to come right over to this side, and I'm going to use the flat end of the hive tool, and I'm going to pry all the frames over that way and take this end frame right here out. I'm going to kneel down. That's another real good trick about working bees. If you stand up, they see a whole lot more of you, but if you get down right there with them, you won't have as many troubles. So I like to get down there kind of low. I'm going to pull this end frame right here out, and then I'm going to start my way over. I'm not going to look at every frame. And there's something I just forgot to tell you. You need to know how strong your beehive is. And the way I do it is by trying to assess how many frames the bees are on. In this colony right here, they're not quite, they're on this frame right here. They're on all 10 frames of this colony. You need to understand exactly how strong your colony is and try to monitor that. So I'm going to pull this frame right here out. We've got bees on all 10 colonies. Now, anytime you take a frame out of a beehive, it's got to go right back in the same way. Hey, there's a beautiful frame of honey right there. Solid honey. I'm going to set it down. Now, you don't need to pull every single frame out. You just go right across there and pop them. I'm going to pop them across until I get right into the middle so I can see what's going on in the middle of this hive. Okay, so the first thing I'm looking for in a colony like this is to see how strong it is. This one's on 10 frames. The second thing we want to see is it queen right? I'm going to take the frame out and look at it right here. You have to orient that frame towards the sun. We've got real good pollen right there. Son of a gun, I found the queen. But you don't have to find the queen. All you have to find is eggs. That's all you have to do to know that you have a queen. That's the second thing we're going to look for. Is it queen right? All I have to see is eggs. Yes, it is queen right because I've found the queen. All right, I'm going to set her back because I don't like keeping queens out of a colony. I'm going to go to the next frame and talk about the next thing that I look for, and that's disease. Foul brood is a real problem with bees, and it's real easy to understand foul brood. You just go into the middle of the brood nest and see if you can see anything that looks abnormal. The brood hatches out in circles like this. Right in here we've got brood right in the middle, so I'm going to look on the outside out here to see if I can find a cell, and there's one right there. I'm going to scratch the head off of it, and we have a white larvae in there. Let's turn it over here. Hey, this is a better one right here. You see right here we have a patch of brood right here, but we have some isolated brood cells. I'm going to look for sunken cappings first. We don't have any sunken cappings. I'm going to take the one that looks like it's the most out of place. I think it'd be this one right here. I'm going to scratch the cap off of it. Yep, we've got a live white larvae right in there. That's a good one. Okay, so we know that there's no disease. We've got stores on the colony. We've got pollen on the colony. We've got honey on the colony. It's queen right, and we don't think there's any disease. That's what you want to look for in a beehive, and you want to try to understand what's going on with the year. Now, there's one other thing that I'm going to do before I get out of this colony right here. I'm going to put her right back together. Uh-oh. We don't want to put these pine needles in there. They won't like that, but they just throw them right out of there. Boy, that is a pretty frame of honey right there. And that's this right here. I'm going to come back to the back of this hive and pick it up. Oh boy, is that heavy. That's a real colony right there. I know how much we've got on it. It's queen right. We've inspected it. It's a real good colony. This one's ready to go. Our hive's in good shape. We know that it's got a good laying queen. The bees have filled all 10 frames, and we're ready to try to make a little bit of honey. Basically, there's two ways to produce honey. One is extracting, using extracting equipment, and the other is in producing cut comb honey. Now, I'm going to talk about extracting honey first. A lot of people think that all there is to extracting is having an extractor, but that's not the case. The most important thing about extracting is having supers with drawn comb. Let me get one of these out. This is a frame of drawn comb. It's been used by the bees. They made the comb. We wired it. It's horizontally wired. Actually, this foundation here is called Duragilt foundation, which is really strong. The bees put honey in it. We cut the cappings off, and we slung the honey from it, and we're going to use it again. These three supers right here are supers of drawn comb, and this is the heart of any system for extracting. When the honey flow comes to be able to make honey, extracted honey, what you do is this. You go out to your colony that's strong, that has all of their frames pulled. You take off the top and the inner cover, and just so we're not out in the bee yard, I'm doing it here as a mock-up, and the bees are on all 10 frames. Then we put on a queen excluder. A queen excluder is a metal grid that keeps the queen from going in, and I've brought some examples here. This is a metal-bound queen excluder right here, obviously named because it's bound with a metal strip. Another style is a plastic queen excluder, and I guess you can probably assume that this is less expensive than the metal-bound excluder. The next style is a wooden-bound excluder, so named because of the wooden binding around it. And then last but not least is this wood and wire excluder that an awful lot of people think is the very best excluder on the market. Now, when you're going to make extracted honey, what you do is you go to your colony and you put a queen excluder on. You have to do that. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And then you go out and you stack up 3 or more supers of drawn comb. 1, 2, 3 supers of drawn comb over a queen excluder. Then you close your hive up by putting your inner cover on it and your top. Now, there's an awful lot of benefits for doing this. Number 1, when you put these 3 supers on here, what happens is the beeswax sends a message to the bees. The beeswax says, we're all empty. All of those combs are there, and that beeswax is exposed to the air, and that beeswax permeates a smell down to the bees that says, all of the combs above you are empty, and you better start working hard to fill them up. So it's working with pheromones, with insect triggers that tell them, get to work, number 1. Number 2, with all of this room here, the bees will bring in the nectar from the hive, and they'll disperse it evenly amongst these 3 supers right here. And then when they drive the air over the combs to dry the moisture out, they drive the moisture out much, much, much quicker. And it takes an awful lot of the labor out for them. Then they just have to produce a cappings over the wax when they get all of the moisture out of it. It makes it much, much easier to be able to extract and put these supers on just like that. Now, the other alternative is making cut comb honey. And when you make cut comb honey, you take frames like this and you put the thin foundation in it. You put 10 frames in it, and you go out to your colony and you put 1 super like this on. You don't put a queen excluder because you don't need a queen excluder. If the queen happens to come up into these frames and lay a little bit of eggs and you're making cut comb honey, you just take a knife and just cut that brood right out of there and don't worry about it. But with these supers right here, these supers are so pretty, they look so good to that queen will come all the way up in them and lay eggs all the way up in them. So when you're going for extracted honey in an extractor, you have to use a queen excluder. When you're trying to make cut comb honey, you just put 1 super of this on. Now, the economics of it, and this is really startling. We are up in the mountains of North Carolina, and we have a real short flow called the sourwood flow. It's of a short duration. When you go for extracted honey, you can actually make 2 to 3 supers of honey in a good year. In a good year making cut comb honey, you're only going to make 1 super of honey. So that's the economics of it. 1 super of cut comb or 3 supers of extracted honey. You can make an awful lot more honey using these drawn combs and slinging the honey from the container than you can having them build it like this. When the bees get the honey fully capped, you want to take the honey off and take it home and can it. There's a variety of methods that we're going to show you about taking honey off, but the first is truly the oldest method that people have used. It's the old-timey method of taking honey off. It's called brushing. When you want to go to the colony and take honey off and use a brush, there's some things that you need to take with you. You need to take 2 tops. They don't necessarily have to be tops. They can be pieces of plywood, and an empty super with you. That's to take the honey with you and to be able to put the honey in. We're going to go into this colony right here, and we're going to take the super, we're going to take the honey out of this super right here, we're going to brush it, and we're going to put the honey back into this super right here. Anytime I go into a colony of bees, I'm going to go into it and I'm going to put some smoke on it. So let me take the top up here and put a little bit of smoke into the colony to let the bees know that there is a fire in the woods. I'm going to give them a couple of seconds to react to it, and then I'm going to take the top off. I'm going to lift the inner cover up, putting a little bit more smoke in there. Let them react, then I'm ready to go. I'm going to give them some more smoke so that they'll all know, and then I'm going to take each frame out individually. You can see the honey is completely capped, and there's a few bees that are left on it. Some people will tell you just to take the bees and shake them off like that, which works, but then you can take a bee brush and get every single bee right off of that frame. You might think that this really upsets the bees, but to be truthful with you, they don't get upset at all. The brush will get every bee off, and then when you do get it off, take it and put it into the super that you brought with you. to keep the bees from getting to it. Then you go to your next frame. Shake. And brush. Shake. And brush. I don't know if you can notice, but the bees are working out the other side of the hive. This is not the front of the hive right here. I'm at the back of the hive. So I'm not in the natural flyway of the bees. That's 4 frames of honey that I've just taken off. Let me go back through and review it for you. We went into the colony, we smoked it real well to let the bees know that we're coming in. We took each frame individually, we brought an empty super and 2 tops or 2 pieces with us so that we could cover it up. Robbing with bees is a problem, so we want to keep them from ever being able to rob. This is the old-fashioned way of taking honey off. It works real well. Well, we got that honey off, brushing the bees off. Now, I've got a little bit of equipment set down here further in our herb garden that I'd like to show you that have a couple of other techniques of taking honey off. The first, and I guess one of the most that hobbyists use, is the use of a bee escape. This is a bee escape right here. It's called the Porter bee escape. It consists of 2 pieces of plastic. The bees go down into this hole, and then they turn around and they come out here or here, and they can't get back into it. Let me open it up and show you how it looks on the inside. It's got 2 metal strips right here. The bees go down, they come out, the metal strips pop back, and they can't get back into it. So this is a way to work with the bees by tricking them. What you do to take honey off with a bee escape is you take an inner cover, and an inner cover has a special hole bored in it for a bee escape. You put the bee escape in it just like this, and you set it underneath a super of honey. The bees go down through the escape and they can't get back out, and after 2 or 3 or maybe 4 days, depending on your location and how cold it is, the bees will be out of the supers. Now, there's problems here. If you have a crack in that super, robbing bees will come and get into it, and they'll rob all the honey out of that super. So whenever you're using any kind of an escape like this, you've got to make sure that your supers are tight, that your tops are down, and that no other bees can get to it. Now, we've got an improvement of this right here, and we call this an escape screen. This escape screen has a really unique feature in it, and to be honest with you, we found the design for this in a bee book dated 1885 or 1890. It has 2 concentric triangles. The bees come through this hole right here, and then they hit this screen wire. Then they come to there's a triangle here, here, and here. They come out through that, and then there's another triangle, and they come out through here, and then they get out. And then they can't figure out how to get back into there. They can get into this opening, but they can't hit this second one right here. So this is a better way that cleans the bees out faster. You put it just like this under a super or 2 supers of honey. You go back in 4 or 5 days and all the bees are gone. This is just an improvement over the other system. Now, the method that most commercial beekeepers use is a thing called a fume pad. There's a couple of chemicals that beekeepers use. One is called Bego, and it is the smellingest drug that you will ever, chemical that you will ever smell. There's a new improvement, and that new improvement is called Honey Robber. It's the same product as Bego, except it just doesn't smell quite as badly as the other did. I had one woman tell me one time that when her husband used Bego that she called it He-Go because she said that she didn't even want him in the house. But this is probably the easiest and best way for a large beekeeper to take the honey off. They take this chemical or another chemical, Bego, or another chemical called benzaldehyde, and they sprinkle it on the inside of this pad. Now this has a felt material right on the inside of it. On the back side is aluminum. This aluminum takes the heat of the sun. You should paint this black, and it would also help to paint the top black too. Paint the whole thing black, squirt the chemical on the pad, go out to your bees, take the top off, put a little bit of smoke on them, and set this on top of them. And in anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, the bees go all the way down off the honey, and you can take the honey off. Whenever you're in a large yard of bees, you could have a problem with bees robbing, and that's one reason that that commercial beekeepers like using these fume pads, because the chemical smell stays on the honey and the bees aren't as inclined to rob. Now there's 3 more methods for taking honey off to ensure you to get a beautiful crop of honey off. Now that we've got our honey off, why don't we run down here and see how we're going to prepare it and get ready to stick it in the jar. When the bees have brought all that delicious nectar into the hive and they dried the moisture down to 18% and they've put it in the comb and they've capped it up with wax, then it's your time to enjoy the product. The Curtis's family down in LaBelle, Florida does a beautiful job of packing comb honey, and Renee Pratt is going to show us exactly how they prepare honey for their retail store.
This is how the honey is brought into the shop. You have 10 frames, and this is a frame of cut comb that we're going to take and cut. We package it in several different sizes and several different ways. The most natural way is just to leave it as it is in the squares with the comb with no extra honey around it. We take and trim all 4 sides and throw away to the bucket to be recycled, as we say, the outer edge. One frame, shallow cut comb frame, will make 4 squares. Then we take and put the lids on. And a label, and it's ready for sale. We also take our honey and we jar it with the excess extract honey around it, which some people want the extract and the comb. Here again, we do the same thing, trim it out. This time we'll get 3 jars. Out of 1 frame. Again, we take an extra jar and we finish filling it